Um, I apologize if I'm all over the place because my hair's all over the place. I've been wearing a hat all day. It's Cowboy Day. I teach high school and it is Spirit Week, and I actually looked pretty nice today and didn't know I was going to be up. I'm usually like hiding in the back where I can have my messy hair and my, comfy clothes. And on the way out the door, he's like, grab your stuff. I'm going to let you speak tonight. Oh, thank you. So I've been wearing a hat all day, and this is hat hair, so my apologies. Tonight we are going to look at Proverbs 3. So if you'll turn with me to Proverbs 3, chapter 3. I am not the prophetic lady, so we're just going to be getting some kind of practical things tonight. And before I forget to remind everybody of our lovely, colorful board over here, full of 2-digit numbers and 1-digit numbers. Oh, all 2-digit numbers. They're excellent. Feel free to grab a number or four to contribute to our youth going to forward. We can use a little bit of extra help in the financial side of that. So if you pick up a 14, you can just hand us $14 and we'll say thank you very much, and then you can grab another one. So if you'll join with me on Proverbs 3, and I'm reading out of an ESV version, so it may not quite match up. Proverbs 3, we're going to start with verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. I'm going to pray after the reading. Father God, we love you, Lord, and we just thank you for the opportunity to gather together tonight. I pray, God, that you would just bless this congregation as hearers of your word, and bless me, Lord, as the giver of whatever wisdom I can impart through your Spirit, Lord. We pray these things in your name. Amen. So the first thing I want to look at is verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. And I'm going to be kind of using all kinds of things because, again, I'm a last minute kind of person when you get this at 6 o'clock and you live 20 minutes away. So when we're looking at verse 5, that word trust, I know Amanda does a lot with the Hebrew of it, and now I'm going to dabble a little bit in that. I don't get quite so deep in there as she does. But the word trust there means to be confident. And there's a lot to be said about confidence. When you have confidence in someone, then you are certain that whatever they say or whatever they are doing, it is for the good, for the benefit. And so when we're looking at the word trust here, and we're looking at in the Lord, most of us, I think, have Lord in our Bibles there. But the Hebrew word there is Yahweh, which is the proper name of the God of Israel. So it's not like they're just saying trust in the Lord. They trust in Yahweh, trust in God, in our one true living God. And so trust in Yahweh with all your heart. And that word all there is every piece, the whole. Anytime in this whole section where you see all your heart, all, the word all, it is the entirety of it. So when I think about, I trust my parents. I trust Steve most of the time. I mean, I do follow him on his phone. I know where he is. And when he's at Prime Barbecue, bring me some cobbler. But when we're saying trust, it's a matter of putting things in God's possession that we cannot control. And that can be a really difficult thing to do. I got a lot going on right now in my professional life. I know you're like, but you're a teacher. Oh, you have no idea. I teach an AP course, and our AP exam is coming up, which is a big high-stakes exam. My students are very motivated, and so they all, of course, want to do the very best that they can. So I'm grading a whole bunch of writing. I'm trying to give them quality feedback, trying to explain to them what a line of reasoning is, and it's just so difficult. But I've got that exam coming up on May 6th. And while all of this is going on and all of that grading is going on, I've got to maintain my national board certification, which I know that's a whole lot to say, but basically I have to prove that I'm a really good teacher with some like evidence and videotapes of my classes and a whole lot of written commentary when I'm an English teacher. So writing is not a problem for me. The problem is paring it down to 8 pages. And I've got 6 pages and I'm not even halfway through. So I'm having to cut a whole bunch of stuff and so it's a whole lot going on while I'm grading essays and on committees and trying to, count cars and carpool and all the things. And so I'm at a place where I am trying my level best to say, all right, God, I'm giving this to you. I know I've got to do my part. I know I've got to sit down and I've got to watch that video of me teaching, which I don't want to watch. And I've got to figure out what 10 minutes I'm going to pull from that. And then I got to talk about it in some writing. I've got to do that. But I've got to trust God that he's going to provide a space and a time for me to do that. That he's going to say, okay, here's your in. That in is probably going to be Saturday while Steve is at a baseball game that I can't go to. But he's going to be out of the house. So that will be my time to work on it. Will I finish it? Only God knows. So when we're saying we got to trust in God, we've got to put everything, in all things. We got to trust God that, you know what, my job only pays this much and I've got this big of a light bill, thanks Duke Energy. And so we've got to trust that God's going to provide for that bill, that God's going to make a way for some groceries to come to my house, whatever the case may be. We have to trust with all of our heart, no doubt. That doesn't mean we don't do our part. Like I said, we do our part. But once we've done all we can do, worrying, which is just a form of not trusting, isn't going to make it better. I had a moment years ago when I realized there are some things that I have no control over. And I like to have control of things. Steve will tell you that. I don't like to not have a plan. That's why tonight is a little stressful for me. I live on a plan. That's what we have to do. I mean, I've got 23 kids in my room staring at me. Most of them are bigger than I am. I got to have a plan, because if I don't, who knows what could happen in this classroom. I've had a junior in high school stick a paperclip in an electric socket. So if you don't have every second planned, something's gonna happen. I have students who try to stand on stools that are meant to wobble. Like, they're meant to wobble. But they think standing on them is a good idea. Let's not. So if we don't have everything planned out, it can go a little haywire. I like a plan. But sometimes our plans, not what God has in store for us. But that's where we have to trust. That's where we have to trust. So let's go to look at 6. In all your ways, there's that word all again, the whole, everything. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. So this is one of the verses in this section that I really want to look at. Of course, we've got the whole, the everything. The word, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the Hebrew. That's a long A. Durekike? I don't know. It's pretty. But what the Hebrew translation comes out to is a road, a course of life, or a mode of action. So that one little 4 letters, ways, in all your ways. We think of ways and it's just like, oh, it's just ways, whatever. But it's the road. It is the path. It is every direction that you could possibly go. Every mode of action that you could possibly take. So when he's saying, in all your ways, acknowledge him, and that word acknowledge there means to know. In all your ways, know God. To know someone is to be intimate with them. In all your ways, know God, and he will direct your paths. He will make straight your paths. That word there, will make, is to be straight, even, to be right, pleasant, and prosperous. Now, that word prosperous doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be wealthy. Lord knows I'm not, and I try to let the Lord direct my paths, but I'm a teacher. The state of North Carolina says I cannot be wealthy. But this gives you an idea of like, he wants you to be prosperous. To be prosperous means that you are sufficiently supplied for. Your needs are met. We have basic needs and we have lots of wants. Steve can tell you, I look at a whole bunch of shoes sometimes that I cannot afford. The Lord does not say, I'm going to give you those prosperous shoes because they're so pretty. But sometimes I can find them on sale. And that's favor from the Lord. But we're looking at prosperous. He's going to make you sufficiently supplied for. And then your paths straight here at the end is a well-trodden road. So if you're going down a well-trodden road, this is a path that God knows. And there have been people who have gone down this path before. And so when we're looking at acknowledging God and knowing God, we want to know that he is familiar with this road. He has been down this road. The Bible tells us that Jesus knew every temptation common to man. He knows that path. So whatever path you're going down, be confident that God's going to know, I know where this path goes. I've been down this path. I've seen where it's heading, and I know where you're heading. Now, if it's a well-trodden path, it's likely going to have potholes because that's what they have. If you've lived in Franklin County, I know you've seen potholes. Or, Lord knows, if you've been through downtown Selma, hang on to your tires. Well-trodden path. And those are not comfortable. I hit a speed bump this morning that I almost, busted a tire. We checked. They were all still air. I didn't realize it was there. It didn't have lines on it. It was just like, bang. I mean, it was loud. Like, I drive a small car. Like a Beetle. Well, it is a Beetle. It's not like a Beetle. It is a Beetle. And it hit that speed bump real hard. People turned their heads and looked at my car as we were sailing over that. Greer's eyes were like, but those well-trodden paths have potholes. They're going to hurt when you hit them. You're going to hit your head. You're going to feel like you're being set back. You might pop a tire. But that well-trodden path is always going to have a way of provision because God knows this path. And he's going to provide a way. He tells us that there's no temptation that he will not provide an escape for. It doesn't tell you that it's going to be an easy, or that you're not going to be tempted really hard. Yes, you are. You're going to have all kinds of things that you can't handle, that you feel like you can't handle. But God provides a way of escape if you know him, if you acknowledge him in all your ways. So as we go through and hit verse 7, 7 says, be not wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord, and turn away from turn away from evil. That's a very straightforward verse. If you look at how that translates from the Hebrew, it is almost exactly the same way. So it's very straightforward. Be not wise in your own eyes. How difficult is that? I mean, we all think we're right a lot of the time. I mean, in my house, most of the time I am. But I like to think that it's because God has given me the wisdom. And and I know he's saying amen back there because he knows I'm almost always right. But when we're looking at things, be not wise in your own eyes. It is not just about your eyes, all right? It's about putting that trust in God, like the previous verses have said, and being able to see things through the lens of how God would have us be and how God would see our prosperous lives. We have to visualize and see God wants the best for us. He doesn't want us to live in misery. He doesn't want us to suffer in solitude and all these things. Are there moments when we are going to be in solitude? Of course. Are there moments when we're going to feel down and feel like we're alone and feel like we have nobody else? Of course. But that's not his plan for us. That's not the ultimate end. There's usually some way that God will reveal to you that trial, that pothole, whatever the case may be that you're dealing with, is going to be useful in some capacity because you're going to come across someone's path who needs a shared moment. I don't know what divorce is like, thank God. I've only been married once, but Steve knows what divorce is like. I mean, I didn't divorce him. But he knows what it's like because I'm not the first. So when someone comes across Steve's life and they're dealing with something that I can't understand, and I might be a little, I don't know, cold about things because I don't get it. Steve's got a whole different perspective. That was a pothole. It wasn't a joyride. It was a pothole. But he endured that pothole through the grace of God and through the wisdom of God, and being able to see there's something at the end of this road that this pothole has a purpose for. And now if he comes across someone, we had a fella at Rocky Cross when we were there who was young and going through a divorce. And Steve was a sounding board for him. And I think it got him through a time that he knew he needed some support, some godly advice. And he found that in Steve because he knew he'd hit the same pothole or the same speed bump without breaking at all. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Evil here is what it is. It's just evil. There is no other word that the Hebrew means. The Hebrew means evil. And if you turn on the television at any given moment during the day, you're going to see it. We are surrounded by it. It is infiltrating the church. Daniel talks about it all the time. We see it all the time. I have friends who are faithful churchgoers who have been deceived by the worldly version of Christianity. They will stand before you and justify abortion, but still claim Christ. They will stand before you and justify homosexuality and still claim Christ, because they're not, and it's because they are being deceived by the evil that has infiltrated every facet of this world. Every facet. It is everywhere. But you have the free will to turn from this evil. Fun fact, we just finished Frankenstein. Well, we finished it in one class and we're almost finished in the other. And we had a conversation today in first period about, anybody ever read Frankenstein, by the way? Just curious. It's really actually pretty good. It's not very long. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10. For those of you who maybe not know, Frankenstein is the scientist. The creature that he builds does not have a name. There's a reason for that. He has nobody. He is neglected, abandoned, all the things. And as such, he has what we would describe today as a horrible childhood. All potholes and no pavement. He had zero smooth sailing at any point. And as a result of that, he becomes what he says, I am malicious because I am miserable. And so we talked about how, if you watch a lot of the true crime stuff or whatever, we've got these people who commit heinous crimes. And nearly all of them will describe their childhoods in the same way. They were full of neglect, full of abuse, full of all the worst of the worst. So we listed in my class this morning some of the awful things that these murderers experienced as children, childhood trauma at its worst. And then I asked them, does their experiences, all of these negative things, does it excuse their crimes and their actions? And they always say no. Because they all know that regardless of those potholes that they lived through, they have free will. They know the decision they're making. That was the gift that God blessed Adam and Eve with, life and free will. And they freely chose to sin. They freely chose to separate themselves from God. And just like that, we have that free will to turn from evil, or we can step right into it. And typically when we step into it, we really step into it, if you know what I'm saying. And it ends up not being what we thought it was going to be, because it was our eyes that we were trusting in. We were looking with our eyes and in our intentions and our plans that are so perfect that we think they never are. Verse 8 says, "It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. So when we look at verse 8, the word flesh there, some people might have a different word. Bodies, I think, is one of the ones. Flesh there, the Hebrew word actually translates part of it to umbilical cord or navel, which I thought was interesting. So if we're looking at healing to your flesh, this is on the very most basic level, right? When an expectant mother maybe gets a cold or whatever, the first thing antibodies do is travel straight through that umbilical cord, because that umbilical cord is the only way that unborn child is going to survive. That umbilical cord provides nourishment, it provides antibodies, it provides all the things that the baby needs. The baby does nothing but exist. But every one of their needs are met through that umbilical cord, even if it means drawing every ounce of life from the mother. If the mother doesn't eat enough, baby's still going to eat through that umbilical cord, because that's just what they do. They draw all of their strength through that one thing. And God is saying, I am your umbilical cord. I am the connection that's gonna build you up, that's gonna give you nourishment, that's gonna provide you with sustenance in life, and provide you ultimately with those antibodies that heal. Healing looks different. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but healing looks different. Sometimes healing is literal healing. It's gone. Steve can tell you, we talked about Steve Williams last night. He had a heart issue. He was scared to death. Steve went over and prayed with him. He was like, look, man, you gotta have faith when you're believing now. I can't believe for both of us. I have it, you have it. Let's heal it. He said, we're praying that those doctors had a misdiagnosis, and that when you go in tomorrow, there's gonna be nothing there. When he went in the next day, there was nothing there. This man who, if this tells you anything, he was in law enforcement with Steve, and they called him Gunslinger. All right, he was a rough man, sweet as sugar, like really nice. To me, anyway. Maybe not to others, but to me. But by the grace of God, he is a saved man today, which was not the case many years ago. But after that whole incident, he called Steve, and he had tears in his eyes saying, man, there's nothing there. They found nothing there. And he left that day praising the Lord for his healing. That's what we hope for all the time. We want healing to look like that. But sometimes it doesn't. My cousin had leukemia. I prayed a lot for her physical healing. She was 35 years old, and I wanted her to stay on this planet with me. She was the one family member that I had who lived close. She was 30 minutes away. Everybody else, an hour and a half. And I prayed and I prayed. But her healing looked different. Will I see her again? I don't know. I don't know the state of her heart. And that makes me probably more sad than anything, because I don't know. But her healing looks different. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. Now, granted, she was much older, and she struggled with that for a long time. And we wanted her to recognize us when we saw it. It was the hardest thing to leave her in Winston-Salem, because she would just look at you like she didn't know you. But now, if I had looked like I looked in high school, she might have known me. But we wanted her to remember us, and that was the healing we wanted. But her healing looked different as well. Now, I know I'll see her again. My grandmother was the picture of faith, and she made really good biscuits. So I know what her healing looks like, but it didn't look like we expected. So when we're praying for healing, Steve's granddaddy's another example. Steve prayed for healing for his granddaddy. We're going to get him home from the hospital. And even his granddaddy said, we're not praying in one accord, buddy. I'm not going back to Pilot. I'm going home, but it's not that home. His healing looked different. And it was a complete and total healing. And we know we'll see him again as well. And so when we're looking at this healing, that he will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. And bones, there's bones. I mean, if you're my age or older, you've probably got some bones that sometimes hurt. Steve's got a knee that hurts. And so when we're looking at refreshment to our bones, that is what the Lord gives us. That is what all of this following his path, trusting and acknowledging and knowing him, that gives us healing, that gives us refreshment. Verse 9, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce, and then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. And I'm going to sit here for a minute on these two verses together, because I know Pastor Daniel talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about tithing and all that. And nobody likes to hear, oh, there they go, talking about money again. But if any of you want to keep your electricity on, you're going to come off with some money, especially if you have Duke Energy, because they're going to really stick it to you. And so money is something that, while people don't want to talk about it, and it's funny, I'm listening to a book right now, and it's set in like the late 1800s, and one of the girls, the ladies in the book, is talking about money, and her uncle, who's a prude, he's like, "You're just rude to talk about money." I'm like, she's like, "Well, you stole my money." Anyway, it's a good book. But money is one of those things that, first fruits here, of course, back then we're looking at flocks, we're looking at whatever their source of income was. It wasn't necessarily physical change. It was something usually donated to the temple, whatever the case may be. Of course, we're still applying this because Proverbs is our book of advice. I mean, this book, the whole book, tells you basically not only how to get along with others, but how to get along with God, and how to get, how to have that mutual relationship with God where he can bless you because he wants to. And I know every single one of you at some point in your life have given a really good gift, right? You remember it probably. You had the perfect gift for somebody and you were so excited to give it to them. And it was probably better for you than it was for the person who received the gift because you had so much fun giving it. My daddy, my sister, and I went in and got him. I know this is going to sound crazy. It was at an antique store, and it was a little monkey in like a bellhop outfit holding a lantern. Sounds silly. Steve will tell you. My daddy loved that monkey, but he was not willing to pay for it at the antique store because it was a couple $100. So my sister and I went in together. We both lived on our own, got our own jobs. We're like, look, we'll just me and her and Mama will all go in, we'll get it, we'll hide it, and it was the most fun giving my daddy that silly monkey. We all took pictures with it because why wouldn't you? It's a great little thing. It's still, he sits in a little place of honor in his fellowship hall. But that was a gift that we loved giving. That's how God feels with us. He wants to give us gifts. He wants to bless us. And sometimes those gifts come in the form of health. Sometimes it comes in the form of money. Whatever the case may be. It might be a whole new friendship that you didn't anticipate. But he wants to give us those gifts. And we should be the same way with him. There is not but so much we can give God. He asks for our praise, and that is often the most we can give. But he also requires our tithes. And if you can go above that with offerings, that's only going to bless you even more. Sometimes an offering looks like buying groceries for a neighbor. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an extra 10 in the offering bucket or wheelbarrow or whatever we're using that Sunday. Sometimes it's just paying the person behind you in McDonald's. I'm going to get those too, because you see that their car is full of kids and it's got smoke coming out the back pipe. And you're like, you know what? They need a blessing today. Because I can guarantee you, God's going to see that blessing come back to you. It's never going to go unrecognized. And at the very least, you get to give somebody a gift. And that sometimes it's a gift they really need. So when he says, honor the Lord with your wealth, that word honor there in Hebrew is to be heavy or weighty. So when you see honor here, this is something that carries weight. And again, anytime in this passage that you see the word Lord, it is Yahweh. It is the proper name of God. It's not just random. It's not just, generic. It is the proper name associated with God. It's like saying Jill. That's my proper name. Yahweh is God's proper name. And when we honor him with our first fruits, that's weighty. That's heavy. It means something, and he receives that in like manner. My daddy has always told me, you cannot outgive God. He will always find a way to give it back to you in sevenfold or tenfold or however many fold you want. So honor the Lord with your wealth and with your first fruits of all your produce. The word produce there, is that what they have? First fruits of all your increase. Yes, increase is good. The Hebrew translation says revenue, which puts it in a little more cash flow. With your revenue, with what you bring in. First fruits. My parents taught me at a very young age to tithe. Like, this is something, a habit that was instilled in me from my very first birthday, where I had money in hand. You got $30 for your birthday. 3 of that goes into the offering plate. Okay. I'm gonna tell you, I had a job for a little while in high school. I had a job for a lot of while in high school, but this particular job was just for a little while because I hated it. It was just on Saturdays, and I made $35 a Saturday under the table, which was kind of nice. Not gonna lie. And when Miss Elizabeth worked, I could go upstairs and take a nap, and she didn't care. But $35 a Saturday, and that was the only income that I had. Now, granted, I did not have to buy my own food. My needs were met by my parents. Obviously, I drove a really pitiful little car, but I liked it. It was fine. Couldn't wear your seatbelt when it rained. But, it's okay. I didn't get in a wreck. There was a hole in the seatbelt shaft, so the rain would rain into the seatbelt shaft. And then if you put your seatbelt on, you'd have this nasty, wet stripe down your clothes. So we just didn't wear a seatbelt. And the Lord protected me because he didn't want my clothes to get dirty. But that $35 every Saturday, I got my $35. And every Sunday morning, I put my $4 in the offering plate. And I remember in high school, I put the rest in like a box or whatever, and I'd take it out as I needed it. And I remember in high school, I looked in my little box, and I had wads of cash in there. And I was like, where did that come from? I am convinced that at some point, Jesus did a feed the 5,000 thing with my money, because I did not make a lot of money in my one day a week. But I felt like I was always spending money, because Daniel was constantly taking us to Wilmington to the movies or somewhere, bowling. We did a lot of bowling. He has his own bowling ball. If I didn't know that. He has his own bowling ball and his own bowling shoes. So we did a lot of bowling when he was my youth pastor. And I always had money to go bowling because the Lord multiplied my little cash box, because I was faithful. I remember thinking, I have been tithing, and the Lord has made my money expand. I am here for it. And I have always paid my tithes. The only time I stopped paying my tithes was when about how many years ago? 15 years ago. I was in between jobs. I was on unemployment, which didn't pay much at all. And I was worried about my finances. And I finally said, you know what? I'd been praying. I had been reading my Bible and digging. And I was in a bad place. I was in a funk. And I said, you know what? I have not been paying my tithes on this unemployment check that is next to nothing. So I told Steve, I got to start paying my tithes again. And so when my unemployment check hit, I went straight, wrote my check, put it in the offering plate. And the next week I had a job offer at a Christian school where I loved working. Pay was beans, and it was a heck of a commute, 35 miles one way. It was a bit of a bit. But the Lord knew what I needed at that time, and I needed that school. It was the best transition. And I attribute that blessing to the fact that I was faithful in my tithing. And I haven't stopped since. It's the first check I write out of my deposit. That's the first thing I pay. Even if I got a pair of shoes I love, first thing I'm going to do when that check hits, pay my tithes, then I'll order the shoes. And the Lord might bless me with a 20% discount. So when we're looking at paying our first fruits, giving Him with our revenue, He says, then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. Now, we've got a barn. I mean, it's got stuff in it. But barns back then held their life. It was all of their food. Anything that they could sell was in that barn. And if those barns weren't full, it typically meant that not just that family was going to go without, but several families were going to go without. And he's like, look, if you're faithful in this, I'm not just going to be faithful in return. I'm going to be faithful in abundance. In abundance. Your barns will be overflowing. And then he says, your vats will be bursting with new wine. So when we look at what new wine is versus old wine is extremely fermented. It means it's been sitting for a while. In fact, if you, my cousin, or her husband, Boyce, sweet man, he gave me a bottle of wine one time that was a specialty bottle. It was called Marilyn Merlot, and it had a label on it with Marilyn Monroe on it, whatever. And of course, I'm not going to drink this one. And he said, well, if you don't drink it, it's going to turn to vinegar. So most wine, not all wine, obviously, but most wine, I guess wine with a lot of sugar in it, if you don't drink it, it eventually turns to vinegar, which is not tasty. I mean, I don't love vinegar. Some people love vinegar. Steve's cousin can drink it out of the bottle. No thanks. I don't like it. Vinegar is not what they're trying to drink. They're trying to drink wine. Vinegar is not, well, hey, let me have a glass of vinegar to drink with my dinner. Nope, nobody wants that. He's saying here with new wine is either lightly fermented or just freshly pressed. So it's going to be sweet, it's going to be refreshing, and because it's new, it's going to last. It's not going to just dwindle away, and nobody's going to pour it out because it's not good, because everything is the best. If you remember in the wedding in Cana when Jesus turned water into wine, that was his first miracle. It was new wine. And all of the guests were like, they saved the best wine for the last, which was not what they would do. They would usually save the worst wine for the last, because by the time they got there, people wouldn't care what it tasted like. They had been drinking it for so long, they're like, oh, this is fine, whatever. But they saved the best wine for last because that was the wine that Jesus touched. That was his water. And so when we're looking at new wine, it is the best. God is filling our barns and filling our vats with the best that he has. And he is filling them to overflowing because we are faithful. So I know this is short, my apologies. But what I want you to get from tonight is not so much that we got to give us our money and we got to do this. That's not what I want you to get from this. What I want you to get is that this whole section of Proverbs gives us basic instructions to get the most out of our relationship with God and his blessings. He wants to bless us. Most of us can say at some point in our life we've had either parents or a grandparent or somebody that always wanted the best for us. And that's where we would go when we wanted a little extra sympathy or something like that. My grandmother, she was, how do you describe Grandma Grace? She was the best, but she was a little bit, I don't want to say distant, because she loved everybody. She was not the lady that if you want somebody to hug on you and say, I love you so much, that would not be Grandma Grace. She had kind of a hard life, and she was, she meant business. This is how you do things. She worked very hard her whole life. But we knew when we were at her house that she had everything the best for us. And if there was anything we wanted that she had access to, we had access to it. She made cinnamon apple rings. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, they're so good. I've not had any like my grandma could make. And so in her freezer, she kept a little bag of those red hot hearts that you get at, and she would only buy the ones that were red all the way through. If you bit into one and it was white, she didn't want that kind. She wanted the ones that were solid red. She was very particular. And that was her stash for making her little apple rings. But all we had to do was say, Grandma, can I have some of your red hots? Yes, you can. Even if they were the ones that were hard to find, she would let us have those. Now, she would swat us with a fly swatter also. But she was our little place of refuge. You know, even when I was in high school, I'd tell my mom, I'm like, I'm going to go spend the night with Grandma. And we would just lay in bed. I'd sleep with my grandmother in her bed. She'd be over there, I'd be over here. We'd be reading Reader's Digest. I don't even know. Do they still make Reader's Digest? I don't even know. But we'd lay in bed, read Reader's Digest, or she'd have her Bible out. And, you know, it's just a place of comfort. And God knows that we need that place of comfort. He is that place of comfort. We see in so many places in the Bible where he says, I am your refuge. And when we look in this section, trust in the Lord because he is our refuge. Trust him. Just exhale. Sit and think, what can I do to fix this situation or to make this situation work? Do what you can and then lay it in God's lap and say, okay, God, I'm trusting you. I can see this far down this well-trodden road, but I need your eyes to see the rest of the way. I need to know that you're going to make straight this path, that you're going to clear this caravan down. Going back quickly to verse 6, in all your ways acknowledge him and know him. If you don't feel like you know God, let me encourage you tonight that you can know God. It's a matter of spending time here. I don't spend nearly as much as I need to, but I try to make time every day to spend in God's word. I'm in the process of reading through the Bible again because I want to make sure that I'm covered everything. You know, and I like to cover things multiple times. And I'll be honest, part of me is a little bit embarrassed that I feel like I know more about Hamlet and Macbeth and Frankenstein and Othello than I do about some places in the Bible. I know the Bible, I know certain things, and I'm pretty quick to find those places that are well worn in my Bible. Philippians is well worn in my Bible. But I spend so much time teaching the same things in my classroom when I should be spending that same amount of time in my word, and I don't. I mean, I can stand up here and to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing them, to die, to sleep no more. I mean, I can go on and on. Because I've taught it for so long and read the same thing over and over again. And it's embarrassing that I know that more than I know here. The only thing that I could probably do that is even close to that from the Bible is the 23rd Psalm or the Lord's Prayer or something. I don't have giant sections of the Bible memorized like I feel like I should in some cases. While I do have giant sections of Shakespeare memorized because 3 times a day, twice a year, 6 times a year for 26 years. The same thing over and over. And so I'm a work in progress at knowing God, but I like to think that God knows that I am working to know him, that I am trying my best to know him better and better every day. Because the more we know him, the more we can look through the eyes and the lens that he would have us see. I want to be that person that can look down and be like, I can see things like God sees it. Because frankly, there are some people that if I don't see them like God sees them, I will slap somebody. It is real hard. It is real hard. And even in my profession, they're mostly adults. It is what it is. And I have to pray almost daily, Jesus, be a fence. Because if he's not, someone else is going to be a punching bag. I'm that person that will quickly take my earrings out if someone crosses a line. And I try not to be that person because I want to be the smiley place. Everybody's like, hey, my students have finally gotten to a point where after the first, 4 or 5 weeks, they know that my face doesn't always indicate how I feel, that this is just my face. And generally, I am friendly. It takes a few weeks. But most of them, they generally like my face. And they know how to get a smile out of me. Oh, I liked your shoes today. I had a lot of compliments on my outfit today. I was wearing my cowboy boots and my cowboy hat. And so they're like, oh, hey. And I'm like, hey. I got a lot of smiles in fourth period when they brought me some lemonade with, little popping pearls and some strawberries. So, food, way to my heart. And so I want to be that person that sees people like God's. And I have to stop and physically consider, this person may not know Jesus. And if they don't, I have to make myself try to be Jesus for them. And that can be hard, because sometimes people make it really difficult. And that's really a way that the devil works. He sends those people sometimes in your pothole path to test you and say, let me see, how are you going to react to this? Because our reactions say a lot about us. And I'm trying to be less reactive and more proactive. Those unguarded moments, I'm trying to guard them early. And a lot of times I do this. Steve will tell you, I'm usually in the bathrooms in the mornings, and I've got my Bible app on, and I'm listening. If I don't have time to just sit and read and ponder, I will be listening to the word. I'm listening to some commentaries. The other morning, and I'm probably going to talk about this at WM, because I don't know why, but I am. The other morning I woke up, and I have no idea where it came from. I have not heard this song in years, literal years, probably since we lived on Stallings Road. How many years was that? 17? Maybe since then. And I was getting ready. It was Celebrity Day. I had my Dolly Parton shirt on. So I was that's why I have a little bit of curl in my hair. I was working on my hair. And I was in the bathroom curling my hair, and all I could think about was this old Gaithers song. Okay, first of all, Gaithers. I love the Gaithers, but I got to be in a mood, But all I could think about was this old Gaithers song with Guy Penrod. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Guy Penrod? Yes? No? Maybe? Love me some Guy Penrod. All the hair. Guy Penrod singing, Hear My Song, Lord. Do you know what I'm talking about? Hear my song, Lord. I'm singing my praise to you. And all the words. Okay. Anyway, you'll hear it when at WM, because that's probably what I'm talking about. But I haven't heard that song in years, and I could not get it out of my brain. And I hummed, because I didn't remember all the words, and hummed for the entire 40 minutes it took to curl my hair. I have a lot of hair. And then when I finished that, I went to the kitchen to get my coffee ready, feed the dog, give her Zyrtec, because, And while I was in the kitchen, I just didn't care about Steve trying to sleep. And I put the song on my Spotify and cranked it up in the kitchen. And I sang that song all day. And I needed it. I needed it. Because I don't even know why that song came to my mind. When I tell you I haven't heard it in years, it's been years. I listened to the Message on Sirius XM in the Tahoe, or I have my contemporary Christian playlist, or I'm listening to K-Love, or one of those. Or if the kids are with me, they're listening to Forrest Frank, which is fun, whatever. But not the Gaithers. Like, it's been a long time for the Southern Gospel, unless what we sang Sunday was Southern Gospel. I listened to that to learn that song, because I did not know that song. Apparently it's pretty well known, but I did not know that song. But the Lord knew exactly what I needed that morning. And he's like, look, you got a path today. And you need to know that song is all about praise. One of the lines says, Hear your children, O Lord. We are lifting our praise to you. Let singing like incense rise to your throne. And I'm like, I'm not the best singer in the world. I can carry a tune a little bit. But I know that is how I connect with God. That's how I connect with the throne room, is through music and through singing. Because sometimes, y'all will see me up here sometimes and I'm not singing. It's because I can't. Because once I start crying, it really sounds wretched. And you don't want to hear it. And you can't hear it sometimes. I try to step back a little bit, but it's still kind of like, oh, that's like Kermit that's having a, coronary or something. I don't know. It's really bad. And so sometimes I just won't sing at all because I can't. But the Lord knows that in those moments, my praise is still going up, whether the sound comes out or not. The praise is going up even if the tears are going down. He knows, and I'm thankful that he does, and that he excuses my terrible, wretched crying voice, because it is really bad. So if I can leave you with anything tonight, trust God. Give him what he deserves as far as praise, as far as first fruits, as far as honor, that weighty honor, and you're going to live a life prosperous. It may not look like prosperous like you think it should. You might not live in a mansion, and you might not drive a 2012 Beetle like I do. But your idea of prosperous is just exactly, God knows what his idea of prosperous needs to be for you. So that was short and sweet. I love you guys. I'm sorry it was me. Maybe one day I'll have my stuff together. So there you go. I'm going to let Steve close this out.